This is HOA. Karen gets denied. She brought a scanner and a grudge. I am a mailroom supervisor at a corporate office who hates chaos, and I live in Lehi, Utah, in a community called the Villas at Lakeview, where the compliance chair carries a clipboard and a stopwatch. On a windy day that whips loose papers and rattles a tow chain, I am standing in my driveway at dusk watching a tow truck back up toward my sedan, and Amy Jones is shouting that the HOA vendor is on contract and I am about to pay their highest rate. Her hand is jabbing toward the truck like she is directing traffic, and her laminated rule card flaps in the wind, but she keeps it angled so I cannot read the fine print. She is the finance committee lead who adds mysterious line items, and right now she is acting like she owns the street. I am sending this email right now, she yells, waving her phone in the air. The board will have your plate number and your refusal on record before this truck even leaves. I take a breath and pull out my phone, aiming the camera at her face. I start recording without saying a word. She notices immediately and her expression shifts from smug to annoyed, but she does not stop talking. That is the thing about Amy. She never stops talking. You think that scares me, she snaps. Keep arguing. You are making my case for me. I do not argue. I just let the phone record. I wrote down every word because later I plan to read them back to her. She does not know that yet, but she will. Right now, she is too busy waving that laminated rule card in my face for the third time this week, shoving the folded policy sheet toward me like it is a warrant. The sheet never stays open long enough for me to actually read it, and I am starting to think that is the point. The tow truck driver steps out, a guy in his 20s with a company polo and a tired expression. He glances at Amy, then at me, then back at Amy. You said this was authorized, he says, holding up a clipboard. I need the signed work order before I hook anything up. Amy does not miss a beat. It is authorized, she says, her voice sharp. This resident is in violation of guest parking limits, and the HOA has a standing contract with your company. You are on the clock. I hold up my phone higher so the camera catches her face. I have a guest decal, I say, keeping my voice calm. It is displayed on my dashboard. You can see it from here. She waves her hand like she is swatting a fly. That decal expired yesterday, she says. You did not renew on time, so your guest vehicle is parked illegally. This conversation is not a debate, it is a directive. I look at the driver. Can I see the work order, I ask? He shifts his weight and glances at Amy again. She steps between us. You do not get to review HOA documents, she says. You are not on the board. You are a resident in violation, and you are wasting everyone's time. I keep the camera on her. The guest decal is valid through the end of this month, I say. I renewed it 2 weeks ago. I have the receipt in my car. She laughs, and it is the kind of laugh that makes my skin crawl. Receipts do not matter if the system shows you are expired, she says. And the system shows expired. The driver looks uncomfortable. He taps his clipboard. Ma'am, if there is a dispute about the decal, I cannot proceed without board authorization in writing. Company policy. Amy's face goes red. The work order is verbal. She snaps. I am the finance committee lead. That is authorization. The driver shakes his head slowly. I need it in writing, he repeats. Otherwise, this is a civil dispute, and I am not touching it. I almost smile, but I do not. I just keep recording. Amy stares at the driver like he just betrayed her in front of a jury, and then she turns back to me. Fine, she says. The truck will stay here until I get the paperwork, and you are going to pay the standby fee. $50 per 15 minutes. I lower my phone slightly. You cannot charge me a standby fee for a tow you are not authorized to complete, I say. That is not how this works. She leans in close, and I can smell her coffee breath. Keep talking, she says, her voice dropping to a hiss. Every word you say is going in my report. You are hostile, uncooperative, and you are making this harder on yourself. I do not move. I do not blink. I just let the phone keep recording, because I know what she does not. I have been recording every interaction with her for 3 weeks. I have timestamps, locations, and witnesses. I have a doorbell camera that caught her moving a notice onto my door 2 days after the deadline so she could frame me as late. I have text messages where she told another resident that she planned to make an example out of someone, and my name came up in the thread. And I have something else, something she does not know about yet, but I am saving it for the right moment. Right now, though, I just need to get through this without losing my job. My employer is watching my attendance, and one more late arrival ends my probation. I cannot afford to be late tomorrow because I spent tonight fighting a fake tow fee. I am rebuilding my finances after a bad year, and I cannot absorb bogus fees that will take months to dispute. That is what Amy counts on. She knows most people will just pay to make it go away. But I am not most people. The driver sighs and pulls out his phone. He makes a call, and I hear him talking to dispatch. "Yeah, I am at the Lakeview property," he says. "The HOA rep says it is authorized, but the resident is disputing it, and I do not have written authorization. What do you want me to do?" There is a pause. Amy crosses her arms and glares at me like this is my fault. The driver listens, nods, and then hangs up. "Dispatch says I need a signed work order or a police report showing abandonment," he says. "Otherwise, I am pulling out." Amy's jaw drops. "You are not serious," she says. "Serious as a heart attack," the driver replies. "I am not getting my company sued over an HOA parking fight. No offense." He climbs back into the truck, and the hydraulic whine kicks in as he raises the wheel lift. Amy steps forward like she is going to block the truck, but the driver just reverses slowly, forcing her to move. She spins toward me, her face twisted with rage. "This is not over," she hisses. "I am filing a formal complaint tonight, and you are going to get a violation notice in the morning. And when the board finds you, it is going to be triple the normal rate because you obstructed HOA enforcement." I stop recording and pocket my phone. "I will see you at the next board meeting," I say. She storms off toward her own house, and I watch the tow truck drive away, its amber lights fading into the dusk. I stand there for a minute, letting the adrenaline drain, and then I go inside and pull up my laptop. I have work to do. I work in a mailroom at a corporate office, sorting priority packages and managing routes, and the job is supposed to be low stress. But my supervisor has been watching me like a hawk ever since I had to take time off last year after a rough financial stretch. I am on probation, which means I cannot be late, I cannot call in sick, and I cannot give them any reason to let me go. That is why tonight rattled me so hard. If Amy had managed to tow my car, I would have been stuck without transportation tomorrow morning, and that would have been it. One absence, and I am out. But that is not the only reason I am fighting this. The Villas at Lakeview HOA has been running a parking enforcement racket for at least 6 months, and I am not the first person they have targeted. I know because I have been talking to my neighbors, and the stories are all the same. Surprise parking patrol photos at night with timestamps that never match reality. Notices that show up days after the alleged violation. Fines that double if you ask for proof. And a tow vendor that charges rates so high that paying the fee feels cheaper than fighting it. Amy is at the center of it. She is not the HOA president, but she runs the finance committee, and she has her hands in every fee, fine, and contract. She is the one who pushed through the new guest parking rules last year, the ones that require every guest vehicle to have a decal that expires monthly. She is the one who hired the tow company that charges standby fees and after-hours rates. And she is the one who walks the neighborhood at night with a clipboard and a flashlight, scanning license plates and taking photos of anything she can twist into a violation. I met her the week I moved in. She showed up at my door with a welcome packet and a smile that did not reach her eyes, and she spent 20 minutes explaining the rules. No street parking after 9 at night. No guests for more than 3 consecutive days without board approval. No work vehicles in the driveway. No trailers, no boats, no commercial signage. Every rule had a fine attached, and she made sure I knew the amounts. I thought she was just thorough. I did not realize she was setting me up. The trouble started 2 months ago when my friend stayed with me for a weekend. He parked in my driveway, and I put a guest decal on his dashboard like the rules required. The decal was valid for 30 days, and I had the receipt to prove it. But on Monday morning, I found a violation notice taped to my door. It said my guest vehicle was parked illegally because the decal was not visible from the street. I went outside and checked. The decal was right there on the dashboard, clear as day. I called the HOA management company and explained the situation. The woman on the phone sounded tired. She said she would make a note in the system and that I should ignore the notice. I thought that was the end of it. It was not the end of it. 2 weeks later, I got another notice. This one said I owed a $50 fine for the guest parking violation, plus a $25 late fee because I had not paid within 10 days. I called the management company again, and this time I got a different person. He said the fine was valid because the compliance officer had photographic evidence of the violation. I asked to see the photos. He said I had to submit a formal records request in writing. I submitted the request the next day. A week went by, and I heard nothing. Then I got a third notice, this one saying my fine had been sent to collections and I now owed $200, including administrative fees and interest. That is when I knew this was not a mistake. This was intentional. I started documenting everything. I took photos of my guest decal every morning. I saved every email and every notice. I installed a doorbell camera and set it to record continuously. And I started talking to my neighbors, asking if anyone else had dealt with surprise fines or towing threats. Turns out, a lot of people had. One neighbor told me she got fined $100 because her trash can was visible from the street on a non-collection day, even though it was tucked behind her fence. Another neighbor said his truck got towed from his own driveway because Amy claimed it was a commercial vehicle, even though it was just a standard pickup with no company logos. A third neighbor said she got hit with a late fee on her HOA dues because the payment processor took 3 extra days to post her check, and Amy refused to waive the fee even though it was not her fault. Every story had the same thread. Amy was involved, the fees were inflated, and fighting it cost more time and money than most people had. But I had time, and I had a reason to fight. The day after the tow truck incident, I wake up to find another notice taped to my door. This one is different. It is not a violation notice. It is a letter from an attorney. The letter is 3 pages long, printed on fancy letterhead, and it is full of legal language that sounds scary but does not actually say much. It claims I am in violation of multiple HOA covenants, that I have failed to respond to previous notices, and that I am now subject to escalated enforcement actions, including fines, liens, and legal fees. It says I have 10 days to pay the outstanding balance of $250, or the HOA will pursue further action. I read it twice, and then I laugh. It is not a real threat. It is a bluff. The letter does not cite any specific covenant violations. It does not include copies of the alleged notices. It does not even have a case number. It is just an attorney letter full of bluff language meant to scare me into paying instantly. I know this because I have a friend who works in property management, and she has seen this tactic before. HOAs hire lawyers to send scary letters, hoping residents will panic and pay without questioning it. Most of the time, it works. But not this time. I scan the letter and email it to my friend. She calls me an hour later. "This is garbage," she says. "They did not follow proper notice procedures. They did not give you a hearing. They did not even prove you owe anything. If you pay this, you are admitting liability, and they will keep doing it." "So what do?" I ask. "You file a records request," she says. "Get every document related to your account. Get the photos they claim to have. Get the board meeting minutes where they approve the fines. Get the contract with the tow company. Get everything. And then you show up at the next board meeting and you make them explain it in public." I draft the records request that night. I ask for copies of all violation notices sent to my address, all photos used as evidence, all board meeting minutes from the past 6 months, all financial records related to the tow vendor contract, and all communications between Amy Jones and the management company regarding my account. I send it via certified mail so there is proof of delivery. The HOA has 10 business days to respond. I count them. On day 9, I get an email from the management company. It says my request is being processed, but some documents require board approval before they can be released. It says I should expect a response within 30 days. I reply immediately. I cite Utah state law, which requires HOAs to provide records within 10 business days unless there is a valid reason for delay. I ask what specific documents require board approval and why. I also ask for the name and contact information of the board president so I can escalate if necessary. I do not get a reply. On day 12, I get a phone call from Amy. Her voice is fake sweet, the kind of tone people use when they are pretending to be helpful but actually trying to intimidate you. "Hi, this is Amy Jones from the HOA board," she says. "I understand you submitted a records request, and I wanted to reach out personally to see if we can resolve this without going through all the paperwork." I put her on speaker and start recording. "I submitted a records request because I have not received proper documentation for the fines you are claiming I owe," I say. "I am entitled to those records under state law." She sighs, and I can hear the irritation creeping into her voice. "Look, I get it," she says. "You feel like you are being treated unfairly. But the reality is, you violated the guest parking rules, and the fines are legitimate. If you just pay what you owe, we can move on." I write down the time and date on a notepad. "I need to see the photos you are using as evidence," I say. "I need to see the board meeting minutes where the fines were approved. And I need to see the contract with the tow company that you tried to use last night." There is a long pause. Then she says, "Those documents are not available for public review. They contain proprietary vendor information." I smile even though she cannot see me. "State law says HOA financial records and contracts are open to member review unless they contain attorney-client privileged information," I say. "Vendor contracts are not privileged. So either you are withholding records illegally or you are lying about having documentation in the first place." Her tone shifts instantly. "This conversation is not a debate, it is a directive," she snaps. "You are going to pay the fines, or we are going to file a lien on your property. And if you keep wasting board time with frivolous requests, we are going to add administrative fees to your account." I let the silence hang for a moment. Then I say, "I look forward to seeing you at the board meeting." She hangs up without another word. The next board meeting is scheduled for Thursday night at 7. I mark it on my calendar and start preparing. I print out every notice I have received, every email I have sent, and every receipt related to the guest parking decal. I organize everything into a binder with tabs and a table of contents. I also print out the relevant sections of Utah state law that cover HOA records requests and due process requirements. My friend from property management agrees to come with me as a witness. She has dealt with HOAs like this before, and she knows how to speak their language. She also knows how to spot procedural violations, which is exactly what I need. On Thursday morning, I get one more surprise. I find another notice taped to my door. This one says that due to ongoing compliance issues, my account has been flagged for priority enforcement, and any future violations will result in immediate towing without additional notice. It is signed by Amy Jones, Compliance Officer. I take a photo of the notice and send it to my friend. She replies with 3 words: "Bring that tonight." If you are enjoying this story, hit that like button and subscribe for more HOA nightmares that end in justice. At 6:30, I drive to the HOA clubhouse where the meeting is being held. The parking lot is nearly empty, which does not surprise me. Most residents do not bother attending board meetings because they feel like nothing ever changes. But tonight is different. Tonight, I am here to change things. Inside, the meeting room is set up with a long table at the front for the board members and rows of folding chairs for residents. There are maybe a dozen people in the room, most of them older residents who look like they have been coming to these meetings for years. Amy is already seated at the board table, flipping through a stack of papers. She glances up when I walk in, and her expression hardens. I take a seat in the front row, right in the middle. My friend sits next to me. We do not say anything. We just wait. The meeting starts at 7 sharp. The HOA president, a man in his 60s with a salt and pepper beard, calls the meeting to order and runs through the standard agenda. Approval of last month's minutes, treasurer's report, committee updates. Amy gives the finance report, rattling off numbers about dues collections and reserve fund balances. She does not mention the tow vendor contract. She does not mention parking enforcement fees. When the floor opens for resident comments, I raise my hand. The president nods at me. Go ahead, he says. I stand up and open my binder. My name is on the record, and I live at the address on file, I say. I am here because I have been subjected to improper parking enforcement actions, including threats of towing, inflated fines, and denial of due process. I submitted a records request over 2 weeks ago, and I have not received a complete response. I would like the board to explain why I am being charged fees without proper documentation, and I would like to know why the HOA is using a tow vendor that charges standby fees for unauthorized tows. The room goes quiet. A few residents turn to look at me. The president glances at Amy, who is staring at me like I just insulted her family. We will take that under advisement, the president says. If you have specific documentation you would like to submit, you can leave it with the secretary after the meeting. I shake my head. I am not submitting anything until I receive the records I requested, I say. State law requires you to provide those records within 10 business days. It has been more than 2 weeks, and I have not received a complete response. I need an explanation for the delay, and I need a timeline for when I will receive the documents. Amy leans forward and cuts in. The delay is because your request was overly broad and included proprietary vendor information that the board is not required to disclose, she says. We provided you with the documents we are legally obligated to provide. If you want more than that, you will need to file a formal complaint with the state. I flip to a tab in my binder and pull out a printed copy of the Utah HOA statute. This section says that all contracts entered into by the HOA are open to member review unless they are subject to attorney-client privilege, I say, reading directly from the page. Vendor contracts are not privileged. So unless you are claiming that the tow contract is privileged, you are required to provide it. The president clears his throat. We will review your request again and provide a supplemental response within 5 business days, he says. Amy looks like she is about to argue, but the president holds up a hand. Let us move on, he says. I sit down, but I am not done. I lean over to my friend and whisper, "Did you catch that?" She just admitted they are withholding the contract. My friend nods. And she did not deny the standby fee claim, she whispers back. That is going to be a problem for them. The meeting continues, but I am not paying attention anymore. I am watching Amy. She is tapping her pen on the table, her jaw tight, and every few minutes she glances over at me like she is calculating her next move. I know that look. It is the look of someone who just realized they might lose. After the meeting ends, a few residents come up to me. One woman tells me she got hit with a guest parking fine last month, and she paid it because she did not know she could fight it. Another man says his car got towed from the visitor lot even though he had a valid guest pass, and it cost him $300 to get it back. A third resident asks if I can help her file a records request because she has been trying to get financial statements for months. I give them my contact information and tell them to document everything. By the time I leave the clubhouse, I have 5 new allies, and Amy knows it. The next morning, I wake up to an email from the management company. It says the board has reviewed my records request and determined that some documents cannot be provided due to ongoing legal matters. It says if I have further questions, I should contact the HOA attorney. I forward the email to my friend. She calls me 10 minutes later. They are scared, she says. That legal matters excuse is bogus. They are stalling because they do not have the documentation, or they know it will make them look bad. So what do? I ask. You file a formal complaint with the state, she says. Utah has an HOA ombudsman. You file a complaint alleging records denial and improper enforcement. They will investigate, and the HOA will be forced to respond. I file the complaint that afternoon. It takes less than an hour, and the filing fee is $20. I upload copies of my records request, the management company's responses, and the email claiming legal matters as an excuse. I also include the violation notices, the attorney letter, and the notice Amy taped to my door threatening immediate towing. 3 days later, I get a letter from the ombudsman's office. It says they have received my complaint and assigned it to an investigator. It says the HOA has 30 days to respond. I feel a small flicker of hope. For the first time in weeks, it feels like someone is actually listening. But Amy is not done. 2 days after I file the complaint, she shows up at the mailbox cluster during the evening rush when half the neighborhood is picking up their mail. She has a clipboard and a stack of flyers, and she is handing them out to anyone who will take one. I watch from my car as she works the crowd, smiling and nodding and pointing at the flyers. I walk over and take one. The flyer is titled Community Standards Reminder, and it is a bullet point list of parking rules, guest policies, and enforcement procedures. At the bottom, in bold text, it says, "Recent complaints have delayed enforcement actions, putting our community at risk. Please report violations promptly so we can keep our neighborhood safe." It is a transparent attempt to frame me as the problem. She is trying to turn the neighborhood against me before the ombudsman investigation even starts. I look up at her. She is watching me with a smirk, and she does not even try to hide it. "Let me know if you have questions," she says, her voice dripping with fake politeness. I fold the flyer and put it in my pocket. "I will add this to my evidence file," I say. Her smirk fades. "You can add whatever you want," she says. "It does not change the fact that you are in violation, and the board has every right to enforce the rules." I turn to leave, but one of the neighbors stops me. It is a woman in her 40s with graying hair and a no-nonsense expression. She was at the board meeting and she asked me for help with her own records request. "Do not let her get to you," she says, nodding toward Amy. "Half the people here know she is full of it. We just did not know what to do about it until you showed up." Another neighbor joins us, a man in his 50s who looks like he just got off a construction site. "I got one of those attorney letters last year," he says. "I paid it because I did not want the hassle. But after hearing your story, I wish I had fought it." A third neighbor, a younger woman with a toddler on her hip, chimes in. "She tried to tow my sister's car last month," she says. "My sister was visiting for the weekend, and Amy said the guest pass was not filled out correctly. We had to call the police to stop the tow truck." I look around at the small group that is gathered, and I realize something. Amy has been doing this for so long that people just accepted it as normal. But it is not normal. It is abuse. And now that someone is finally pushing back, other people are starting to see it too. I pull out my phone and open a notes app. "If any of you want to file a complaint with the state, I can send you the forms," I say. The more complaints they get, the harder it is for the board to ignore. All three of them nod. The woman with the toddler says, "Send me the link." I am done being quiet. By the time I get home, I have 8 people who want to file complaints. I send them the link to the ombudsman's website and a template they can use to write their statements. I also create a shared folder where everyone can upload their documentation. That weekend, Amy escalates again. I am out running errands when I get a call from my doorbell camera app. Someone is at my door. I open the app and see Amy standing on my porch, holding a folded policy sheet and a pen. She rings the doorbell twice, waits 10 seconds, and then tapes something to the door. I drive home immediately. When I get there, the notice is still taped to the door. It says I have been cited for failure to maintain my front yard landscaping in accordance with HOA standards. It lists 3 alleged violations: overgrown grass, weeds in the flower bed, and an unapproved garden decoration. I look at my front yard. The grass is trimmed. The flower bed is clean. The only decoration I have is a small metal wind spinner that I bought at a hardware store 3 months ago. I take photos of the yard from multiple angles and timestamp them. Then I check the doorbell footage and save the clip of Amy taping the notice to my door. I send everything to my friend. She calls me an hour later, and she is laughing. "This is gold," she says. "She just gave you proof that she is making up violations. Your yard is fine." And that notice does not even cite a specific covenant. She is grasping at straws. "So what do?" I ask. "You do nothing," she says. "Let her keep digging." Every fake notice she sends is more evidence for the investigator. But I do not do nothing. I send an email to the management company with photos of my yard and a request for clarification on which covenant I allegedly violated. I also ask for copies of the compliance inspection report that Amy used to justify the citation. The management company does not reply. 3 days later, someone moves a notice onto my door to frame me as late, and Amy pretends she is shocked when I confront her about it. I catch it on camera. The original notice was dated Monday. But on Thursday morning, a new notice appears on my door, this one dated the previous Friday. It claims I failed to respond to a violation within the required time frame, and I am now subject to escalated fines. I pull up the doorbell footage. On Monday, Amy taped the first notice. On Wednesday, someone else, a man I do not recognize, came to my door and removed the Monday notice. On Thursday morning, Amy returned and taped the backdated notice. I save all the footage and send it to the ombudsman investigator with a detailed timeline. I also file a supplemental complaint alleging fraud and evidence tampering. The investigator replies the same day. Her email is short. "Thank you for the additional documentation. We will include this in our review." A week later, I get a letter in the mail. It is from the ombudsman's office, and it says they have completed their preliminary investigation. The letter says they found multiple violations of state HOA law, including failure to provide records, improper notice procedures, and lack of due process. It says the board has been ordered to provide me with all requested records within 10 business days, to rescind all improperly issued fines, and to conduct a full audit of parking enforcement fees collected over the past year. I read the letter 3 times to make sure I am not imagining it. Then I call my friend. "We won," I say. She laughs. "You won round 1, she says. "Now comes the hard part. They have to actually comply." The board does not comply quietly. Instead of just providing the records, they schedule an emergency board meeting and send out a neighborhood-wide email accusing me of filing frivolous complaints that are costing the HOA thousands of dollars in legal fees. The email is signed by the board president, but I know Amy wrote it. The tone is pure Amy, defensive, self-righteous, and designed to make me look like the villain. The email backfires. Within hours, I start getting messages from neighbors who are furious that the board is spending HOA money on legal fees instead of fixing the playground or repaving the roads. One neighbor forwards me an email chain showing that Amy pushed the board to hire an attorney specifically to fight my complaint, even though multiple board members thought it was a waste of money. Another neighbor, the woman with the toddler, sends me a photo of her own violation notice. It is dated 2 weeks earlier, but she never received it. She found it buried under a stack of mail in her mailbox, as if someone had shoved it in after the fact. I add everything to my evidence file and forward it to the investigator. The 10-day deadline comes and goes. The board does not provide the records. Instead, I get another email from the management company saying the board is still compiling the documents and needs an extension. I reply with one sentence. The ombudsman's order did not include an option for extensions. The next day, a courier delivers a box to my door. Inside are over 200 pages of documents, violation notices, board meeting minutes, financial statements, and the tow vendor contract. I spread everything out on my dining table and start going through it page by page. The tow contract is a gold mine. It shows that the HOA agreed to a minimum monthly fee of $500, whether or not any tows actually happen. It also shows that the HOA gets a kickback of 15% on every tow fee collected. That means every time someone gets towed, Amy and the board make money. I also find meeting minutes from 6 months ago where Amy proposed the new guest parking rules. According to the minutes, she told the board that stricter enforcement would generate additional revenue to cover maintenance costs. One board member raised concerns about targeting residents unfairly, but Amy dismissed the concern, saying that residents who follow the rules have nothing to worry about. But the real smoking gun is in the financial statements. Over the past year, the HOA collected over $30,000 in parking fines and tow fees. Nearly half of that total came from just 5 addresses, including mine. And every one of those addresses had filed a complaint or questioned a fine at some point. I scan every document and send the full set to the investigator. I also send copies to the 5 neighbors who filed their own complaints. One of them calls me that night. "This is insane," he says. "They have been running a scam, and nobody knew." "People knew," I say. "They just did not know what to do about it." "So what happens now?" he asks. "Now we go to the next board meeting," I say, "and we make them answer for it." The next board meeting is scheduled for 2 weeks out, but the board tries to cancel it. They send an email saying the meeting has been postponed due to scheduling conflicts. But state law requires HOAs to hold regular meetings, and residents have the right to attend. I reply to the email with a reminder of that law, and I copy the ombudsman investigator. The board reinstates the meeting. On the night of the meeting, the clubhouse is packed. There are at least 30 residents in the room, more than I have ever seen at an HOA meeting. Most of them are people who got hit with fines or towing threats. A few are just curious. And a handful are there to support Amy, sitting in the back row with their arms crossed and their faces set. Amy is already seated at the board table when I arrive. She does not look at me. She is staring straight ahead, her jaw tight, her hands folded on the table. The board president sits next to her, looking uncomfortable. The other 3 board members look like they would rather be anywhere else. The meeting starts on time. The president runs through the agenda quickly, clearly hoping to get through it without incident. But when he opens the floor for resident comments, I raise my hand. He hesitates, then nods. I stand up with my binder. I am here to address the findings of the ombudsman investigation and the documents the board was required to provide, I say. Based on those documents, it is clear that the HOA has been engaging in predatory enforcement practices, targeting specific residents with inflated fines and using a tow vendor that provides financial kickbacks to the board. The room erupts. Several residents start talking at once. The president bangs a gavel and calls for order. "Those are serious accusations," he says. "Do you have proof?" I hold up the binder. "I have copies of the tow vendor contract, which shows a kickback arrangement," I say. "I have financial statements showing that 5 residents were responsible for nearly half of all parking fines collected last year. I have meeting minutes where the finance committee lead proposed stricter enforcement to generate revenue. And I have doorbell footage showing that violation notices were backdated and tampered with." I drop the binder on the table in front of me. The sound echoes through the room. The president looks at Amy. She does not move. "And I have one more thing," I say. I pull out my phone and hold it up. I have a recording of a call between the tow company dispatch and a resident, where the dispatch supervisor confirms that the HOA requested a tow without proper authorization, and that the tow driver refused to proceed because the request did not meet company policy. I press play. The recording is clear. It is the conversation between the tow truck driver and his dispatch from the night Amy tried to tow my car. The dispatcher tells the driver to leave because the HOA rep does not have written authorization, and the driver replies that the rep tried to intimidate him into proceeding anyway. The room goes completely silent. Every eye is on Amy. She is still staring straight ahead, but her face has gone pale. One of the neighbors in the front row stands up. She is the woman with the toddler, and she is holding her own stack of papers. "I got a fake notice too," she says, "and I paid a fine because I did not know I could fight it." How many other people paid fines they did not owe? 3 more hands go up. Another neighbor stands. "My car got towed last year, and I had to pay $250 to get it back," he says. "I want a refund." More hands go up. The president holds up both hands. "Everyone, please," he says. We will review these claims and respond appropriately. But a woman in the back row cuts him off. No, she says, her voice sharp. You will respond now. We want to know if the board knew about the kickback arrangement, and we want to know if anyone is getting fired over this. The president looks at Amy. She still does not move. Finally, one of the other board members speaks up. It is a man in his 50s, and he looks furious. I did not know about any kickback, he says, and if this is true, I am calling for an independent audit of the entire parking enforcement program. The woman with the toddler nods. I second that, she says. The president clears his throat. We will schedule an audit, he says, and we will review all enforcement actions from the past year to determine if refunds are warranted. That is not good enough, someone shouts from the back. We want a vote. Right now. The president looks around the room. He knows he is trapped. If he refuses, the residents will file more complaints, and the ombudsman will escalate. If he agrees, Amy is finished. He nods. Fine, he says. I move that the board conduct an independent audit of all parking enforcement fees collected over the past year, and that any improperly collected fees be refunded to residents. All in favor. 4 hands go up. Amy does not raise hers. The motion passes, the president says. After the meeting, a dozen residents come up to me to shake my hand or ask for copies of my evidence. The woman with the toddler hugs me. Thank you, she says. I did not think anyone would ever stand up to her. Amy leaves through a side door without saying a word. I watch her go, and I feel a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. It is not over yet, but it is close. Over the next 2 weeks, the independent audit is conducted by a third-party accounting firm. The results are devastating for Amy and the board. The audit finds that over $15,000 in parking fines were improperly assessed, including fines based on backdated notices, fines for violations that did not exist, and fines that were doubled or tripled without proper authorization. The audit also confirms the kickback arrangement with the tow vendor and recommends that the contract be terminated immediately. The board votes to terminate the contract at an emergency meeting. They also vote to refund all improperly collected fees and to adopt new enforcement procedures that require photographic evidence, proper notice timelines, and a formal hearing process before any fines are assessed. And then, at the same meeting, a board election challenge that flips the power dynamic is announced. 3 residents, including the woman with the toddler and the man who said his car was towed, file petitions to run for board seats in the next election. The neighborhood group chat explodes with support. Within days, they have enough signatures to force a special election. Amy resigns from the board 2 days before the vote. She does not give a reason. She just sends a 1-sentence email to the management company saying she is stepping down effective immediately. The special election happens a month later. All 3 challengers win by landslide margins. The old board president steps down voluntarily, and the new board elects a president who actually listens to residents. At the first meeting under the new board, the HOA issues a memo clarifying the rule Karen weaponized. The memo states that guest parking decals are valid for the full 30-day period as long as they are properly displayed, and that compliance officers are required to verify expiration dates before issuing any violation notices. The memo also states that residents have the right to request photographic evidence of any alleged violation, and that notices must include the specific covenant or rule being violated. The new board also votes to eliminate all outstanding fines that were assessed under the old enforcement procedures. My account is cleared, along with dozens of others. I get a call from the ombudsman investigator a week later. She says the case is officially closed, and she thanks me for my cooperation. She also says that based on the findings, the state is considering new legislation to strengthen HOA transparency and accountability. I hang up and sit at my kitchen table, staring at the empty binder that used to hold all my evidence. It feels surreal. For months, I felt like I was fighting a losing battle. But I kept going, one document at a time, one email at a time, one meeting at a time. And in the end, it worked. A few days later, I am at the mailbox cluster picking up my mail when I run into the woman with the toddler. She is smiling. "Did you hear?" she asks. "Amy tried to run for a seat on the architectural review committee, and she got 0 votes. Not even her own." I laugh. "That is the best news I have heard all week," I say. She shifts her toddler to her other hip. "You know what the funniest part is?" she asks. "She tried to shame you at that mailbox performance scene, remember?" And then the neighbor fact-checked her instantly. He pulled up the covenant on his phone and read it out loud, and everyone just stared at her. She has not shown her face around here since. I think about that moment. I remember the crowd at the mailboxes, the way Amy tried to recruit complaints like a campaign, waving her clipboard and her laminated rule card, insisting that I was the problem. And I remember the neighbor, a quiet guy who always kept to himself, pulling out his phone and reading the actual covenant word for word, and how Amy's face went red when she realized everyone could see she was lying. That was the moment everything shifted. That was the moment people stopped being afraid of her. We walk back to our houses together, and I feel something I have not felt in months. Peace. The villas at Lakeview is still an HOA neighborhood, and there will always be rules and fees and the occasional petty dispute. But it is not Amy's kingdom anymore. It is a community again. And I do not have to worry about surprise tow trucks or backdated notices or fake fines designed to drain my bank account. I can park my car, go to work, and come home without feeling like I am walking into a trap. That is all I ever wanted. A week later, I get an envelope in the mail from the HOA. Inside is a check for $250, the full amount of the fines I was charged, plus interest. There is also a letter from the new board president apologizing for the improper enforcement actions and thanking me for bringing the issues to light. I deposit the check and frame the letter, not because I need the reminder, but because I want to remember what it feels like to win. And I want to remember that sometimes, when you stand up to a bully, other people will stand up too. You just have to be willing to go first. I hope your property line stays drama-free.